Welcome to the Dr. Broadway Podcast, the musical theater history podcast where a couple of doctors sit around and talk about Broadway. I'm your host, Dr. Kristin Stultz Pressley, joined as always by Dr. Tracey Brent-Chessum. Tracey, what are we talking about today?
Today is episode 3 of our Bookish micromester. Still love that. I'm going to say it in every episode. Where we're talking about the touring musicals that are based on books. So today we're looking at The Outsiders that won the Tony in 2024 for Best Musical, believe it or not. And many of you, even if you're big musical theater fans, probably 2024 we didn't focus on the best musical that year. That year was all about Harry Potter and King George III winning their best actor and best supporting actor for Merrily We Roll Along. So
Yeah. So it didn't get the attention it normally does. Another thing that I want to point out is that you might be hearing that it won the Best Musical Tony Award and wonder, why was this not part of the Tonys on Tour? Well, I will tell you why this was not a part of the Tonys on Tour. The tour did not start for this show until the fall of this year. So it's just now getting on the road. So
it's only been on the road for 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's brand new. That's right. It's brand new. So that's why it wasn't part of the season 1 lineup, is because it wasn't yet touring, even though it was already on Broadway. So The Outsiders, I imagine this is one that, judging by what I've read about it, a lot of people are probably familiar with. They've probably encountered it in the same way that they encountered The Great Gatsby, which we discussed a few weeks ago. This is one that is read often in high schools and middle schools around the country, though I was not familiar with it at all. Tracey, I don't know about you.
No, I wasn't either. I mean, I had heard of it because it's a movie as well. Like, I've heard the title, but I don't think I ever actually saw the movie growing up either. So.
I haven't seen it either. But man, does it have a lineup? It has a murderer's row of talent.
Yeah. Well, and it has a huge fan base too.
Yes.
So I always think it's interesting when you watch people choose shows. This one's based on a book that was then made into a movie. It has diehard book fans and it has diehard film fans, and it's like, will that translate to this? But it's still not as in the popular conscience as something like The Notebook. So I was like,
Gatsby,
Gatsby. So I kind of am like, you know what, this was actually, whoever chose this as something to pursue was probably thinking pretty strategically. And I was like, this is a really interesting thing to bring to Broadway, because it is kind of in the middle there, where it's like, it's got some name recognition, but not The Great Gatsby. But, this is a strategic choice there. So.
Yeah. So without any further ado, let's just jump right into this one. This book is enormously important. Like I said, though I had not encountered it, it's really credited with launching the whole young adult genre, which is unbelievable when you hear about who wrote it and when it was written. I mean, it's an astounding story. The backstory of The Outsiders is fascinating. So regardless of what's on stage, this is an unbelievable story to tell. So this, like we said, is obviously, it's part of the Bookish micromester. So it's obviously based on a book, and that book was written by a young lady, believe it or not. Susan Eloise Hinton wrote this book when she was 15 years old, so in the mid-1960s in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She actually published it under the pen name S.E. Hinton because she was concerned, even as a teenager, she was 17 when it was published, she was concerned even then that male reviewers would see the name, Susie Hinton or Susan Eloise Hinton and think, oh, it was written by a woman, let's just dismiss it out of hand. So she published as S.E. Hinton so that they wouldn't just instantly dismiss her. But let me tell you a little bit about Susie Hinton, S.E. Hinton, as her pen name. She grew up on the north side of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and was part of a working class family. Her dad was a door to door salesman. Her mom worked on an assembly line. Hinton has described her home life as abusive and cold. It does not at all sound like she had a great childhood. Part of that was she attended what she called a quote fundamentalist hellfire and brimstone church, which may not have been super accommodating.
We have some trauma that we are working through here, and right. Yes, ma'am, I'm with you.
Right. So she had this is the home that she grew up in, and she talks about how when she became an adult, all she wanted to do, and even as a child, all she wanted was to live in a happy home, right? She just wanted peace in her home, and it was not there. Outside of that, she was a tomboy. She loved horses. That's going to come up again here in just a few minutes as we tell the story of The Outsiders. But she loved horses. She loved reading. And she attended Will Rogers High School. So Will Rogers is another guy who has his feet firmly in the Broadway, the map of Broadway history. But she attended Will Rogers High School. And there, not surprisingly, there were, the kids from the right side of the tracks and the kids from the wrong side of the tracks, right? And she calls those, in her eventual book, The Outsiders, the greasers. So those are the kids from the blue collar families like her own, and the sociis. Those are those from the upper echelon, the social families who have oil money, basically, in Tulsa. So those are the two groups that she saw, that she experienced every day as she went to school. She saw their interactions, the way that they, were not particularly fond of each other, these groups. She saw the fighting that happened, and that inspired her to write stories. So I'm
just going to break in here and say for the movie and for the musical, it's pronounced socias.
Oh, socias. Okay.
Yeah. Socias versus socias, not a big deal. But I was just like, that's going to confuse some people.
No, I'm glad that you corrected me, because having never seen the movie,
it was musical.
Yes, I was guessing. So thank you. So,
no, don't get. You're good.
The socias. But those are the just the two different, those coming from different side of the tracks. Honestly, it sounds like a John Hughes movie, if you ask me, to put it in an 80s context. This is the plot of Pretty in Pink, right?
Oh gosh.
And that's a movie I have seen. At any rate, so she starts writing very young. Like I said, she finished The Outsiders at 15, but she had already written 2 complete novels prior to writing The Outsiders, but her mother tossed the manuscripts into a fire. So that gives you a little bit of insight into the atmosphere that Hinton wrote to escape, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Just the volatility, right? It was not warm and fuzzy at all at home. So when she was 15, her father was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And, she said that watching him lay there dying was just horrific, as you can imagine. Yeah. And he, what she did was she wrote to escape that as well. She said, I wanted to live anywhere other than where I was living. And so she lived in her mind, and she lived in the world of The Outsiders, which was not a big leap for her, like I said, because this is what she faced every day as she went to school. She was writing about alienated youth, which she could certainly relate to. She was alienated in so many different ways, even at home from her parents, and teenage gangs in Tulsa in the 1960s. So she writes this full manuscript at age 15 as her father is dying from a brain tumor. And as luck would have it, or kismet, or fate, or whatever you want to call it, she had a friend who knew someone whose mother, which underscores her own age at the time that she wrote it, was a children's book writer. And that friend's mother sent the manuscript to her own agent, and the agent said, that ain't half bad. We'll take it. And Viking Books buys S.E. Hinton's manuscript for $1,000.
In the
Tracy,
60s.
in the 60s for a
I know
17-year-old.
we know where this is going.
We know where this is
How much is
going.
that
I
worth in
thought
today's?
you would never ask. I'm so glad you're giving me the opportunity to
I
tell
know,
you the
I know.
modern equivalent. Almost $10,000.
For a 15-year-old.
Yeah. So think
Did
about
her mom
this.
take it?
I'm sure she probably
Did she
lit
throw
it on
it
fire.
in the fire too?
Right? I'm sure she did. But imagine that you've grown up in a, very working or a very middle class, or not middle class, lower class. I mean,
Yeah.
very blue collar family in North Tulsa. And suddenly you've got what we would see as the equivalent of $10,000 to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's unbelievable, but it gets even more unbelievable because the book is published in 1967. She is 17 years old at the time, and it has sold 14 million copies. Even now, it sells 300,000 copies a year.
Yeah.
Unbelievably successful.
It's an interesting, and you understand why they put it in curriculum, because it's written by a teenager for a teenage audience. And so it's not someone else going, how do I embed literary devices? How do I do
Right.
This is just somebody's talent that hasn't really even been, honed in any
Right.
way. And it's just, this is what's kind of coming out. And they say, it's a pretty short book. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not overdeveloped in any way, shape, or form. It's just very straight to the point. And so it works for little guys. They're not little, but you know what I mean.
Right. Right. Well, it's interesting you say that because one of the creators of the musical, I can't remember which, but commented, it might have been Adam Rapp who wrote the libretto. But he, whichever one it was, commented on how that was the reason why it was so successful, because most of what's written for young adults is filtered through an adult, right?
An adult perspective, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they're trying to recall what it was like to be a young adult, but that's very different from just the raw, unfiltered young adult writing for young adults' sake, right?
Yeah.
And we use that phrase now like it's nothing. But at the time, the idea of young adult fiction did not exist.
Exactly. Yes.
Right? And so it was this book, as I alluded to real briefly earlier, that launches that notion that, whoa, this is an untapped audience, right? Like these are readers, right? These kids are reading books. And the fact that it sold so much so fast was proof of that. And so it really is credited with launching the whole genre of young adult fiction, which now that's where we get Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Etc. Right?
And we need that kind of stepping stone. There's this
Yes.
the adage that, kids don't read. And that's not necessarily the case. I think it's like what are the stepping stones? You can't really expect them to go from board books to Great Expectations. It doesn't work. Like, what's the next step? What's the next step? And we didn't have that growing up. Like literally we went from board books to my parents bought from a traveling salesman, I think. Like
I'm sure
that the huge volume of great literature that had like Peter Pan and but it was thick books, no pictures.
Right.
And they were long and daunting, and so you never picked them up. And
Right. You
had to be the special kind of person that was like, ooh, I could get all the way through that. And I was like, I really want to read this. I cannot sit down here and do all of that.
No,
it was
I
like
didn't
not
even
gonna
try.
happen. Yeah.
I had no interest. Go
If
it wasn't
figure.
Ramona the Pest.
Yes.
Or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I think the book is called. I could have cared less.
Yeah.
But this was really standing in that gap. And it showed publishers that there was a gap, right? That this is something that we need to fill. And so that whole young adult genre, we can point to The Outsiders as really kicking it off. So she is starting in at college at the University of Tulsa, and she's making a ton of money. But guess what else? She's under a ton of pressure. If you write your magnum opus, and it's published at 17 and you wrote it at 15, where do you go from there? Right?
Yeah.
And so she's dealing with this influx of capital. By the way, she bought herself a horse. Remember that because it's going to come up later. But horses were very important to her. Um, so she used her money to buy that. But she also kind of fell into a depression because she was like, how do I match what I've already done?
Yeah.
How do I get lightning in a bottle twice? And I'm, a freshman in college. So it's while she's a freshman in college that she meets her future husband, who is still her husband to this day. They met in a freshman biology course at the University of Tulsa. And it was him who really broke her out of her writer's block. And she subsequently has written several more young adult novels in pretty quick succession through the 70s. None of them obviously
That's
hitting the
big.
marks that The Outsiders did, but nevertheless she bounces back, she gets back in her rhythm and is able to write some more.
Hmm. I
But
have a
The
question for
Outsiders
you.
is the banner book, her
Yeah.
banner book. Yeah. Yeah, what's that question?
What the thing that I'm the most surprised by is the fact that this is a book written by a young girl,
Hmm.
and
About
there
young
are
boys.
about young boys. There are
That's interesting.
very, very few girls in here.
Yeah.
And the ones that we do have are just very sure of themselves and are not silly at all, which I was like, okay, that makes sense to me.
Hmm.
But the fact that this does resonate with young men is always, I don't know, it always surprises me because obviously she has the lingo and the characters sound, like, anyway, interesting.
I think that's a great point. And until you just asked that question, that never even occurred to me. But you're absolutely right. That is very interesting to think about how, especially in the 60s, I mean, think of how differently girls were expected to
Act and
think and
behave.
behave in 1965 when she wrote this manuscript that was published in 1967. And for her to capture not only boys but like the tough guys, right?
Yeah.
Like the street rat kind of guys, right? And for her to do it like she does, um that's pretty incredible. But that's
Yeah.
a great question that you bring up, and I don't
Interesting.
have an answer, but it is food for thought for sure.
Hmm.
So the next step towards getting The Outsiders, the musical, is The Outsiders film. And I am completely in love with the way that this film came about. So it's in 1980. So this is 13 years removed from the book being published in 1967. In 1980, there was a school librarian whom I could not love more than I do based on what I read about her. I love this woman. She was a school librarian at a K through 8 school in Fresno, California, Northern California. Her name was Jo Ellen Misakian.
Which
And
at that
yes,
time, there's nothing in Fresno, California. It
right.
is
Which is
in
why
the
the school was
middle
K through 8, right?
of nowhere.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So, but what she notices is she realizes she lives like I do with, middle school boys. And she realized he is not reading. Well, mine don't read either. So
You're
I
like,
get it. Maybe that's why it resonates so loudly with
yeah.
me, what she did. She noticed he wasn't reading anything and she gave him a copy of The Outsiders and he really liked it.
Hmm.
And then it gets passed around to the other boys in this K through 8 school in Fresno, California, and they all like it. So essentially
Hmm.
what she realized was they don't want to read, but if they do want to read, they want to read The Outsiders. All right. So at some point, and she in Variety, in a Variety write up about this, kind of a retrospective that they published on the film's 35th anniversary in 2018, she said, I don't really remember where the idea came that it should be a movie, but somehow the idea came up that this should be turned into a film. Well, she is a school librarian in the middle of nowhere, California, right? She has no idea how to make that happen. So she starts a petition, first of all, and she passes it around the school, and she gets eventually 300 signatures of people saying, is that, I feel like this is the most late 70s, early 80s thing in
Yeah.
the world. Sign my petition.
My petition about we want this made into a movie.
Yes, get this book made into a movie. I love that she did that. She had no idea, though, what to do with that petition once she had all those signatures. So she called a columnist at the local paper, the Fresno Bee. Again, is this not the most? It is so 1980s.
And no one at the Fresno Bee knows how to get in touch with anyone. Come on.
Right. But that's her pipeline, right? Yeah. That's her connection to the outside world. And I love it. So she calls a columnist at the Fresno Bee and says, what should I do? I've got this petition. I've got this idea. What do I do? And the columnist at the Fresno Bee says, well, why don't you contact the movie editor at Parade Magazine? Okay, so Parade Magazine, which I remember very vividly, was a like an insert in the Sunday paper.
Yeah.
I read it every week. It was like People Magazine kind of in your Sunday newspaper, which we always had the Sunday newspaper at my house. And I remember reading Parade, and I loved it. Even as a kid, I thought it was so interesting. So this is Parade Magazine. I'm sure it doesn't even exist anymore. But at this point, it was very, very popular. So she calls the movie editor of Parade Magazine. And I love the fact that these people are answering their phones. You know what I mean? Like, it's so 80s.
You'd never be able to get a hold of someone.
No, never. I can almost hear this woman's voice. Honestly, I can see what she's wearing. I can tell the haircut. I see this so clearly in my mind. I think that's why I love her so much. But anyway, she does get a hold of the movie editor for Parade Magazine. And the movie editor says, well, why don't you get in touch with the author of the book? So then she reaches out to S.E. Hinton. Well, Hinton never responds. Hinton has definitely got some Harper Lee vibes. Not to the extent that Harper Lee is Harper Lee, but definitely some vibes, right? And by that, I mean, I love Harper Lee, and I love both of her books that we have published. But by that, I mean, she recessed into almost, what's the word? What do you call it? Hermit. She hermited, right? By design. Like, she really drew up into her shell, and did not, she gave more interviews than Harper Lee did, but she was not comfortable with that whole side of things. So she really stayed out of that, including not responding to Joellen Misakian's call. I'm sure she called her. She would not waste her time on a letter. She definitely called. I love this woman. And so she doesn't get an answer from Hinton. So around that same time, she picks up a copy of Newsweek magazine. This is another magazine. I don't know if it's still published, but it was a weekly, and we all read it. Is it still a thing?
Newsweek is still a thing.
We all read it. I remember in school, did y'all do this? You could subscribe to it for super cheap and get it as part of like your history class. Yeah. So Newsweek was a very big deal. Well, she picks up a copy of Newsweek and she reads a review of an adaptation of the book The Black Stallion, which is also written for young adults. And this adaptation of The Black Stallion, which obviously is going to resonate very loudly with a K-8 school librarian, was produced by Francis Ford Coppola.
The Godfather is going
as in The Godfather. Bingo. As in The Godfather.
I love it.
And also like Apocalypse Now, right?
Yeah,
Like,
she didn't have a very broad like film education. Not at all.
No,
and that's okay.
Which is why we love her. Which is why we love Joellen Misakian. The unsung hero of the outsider story. So she finds, well, that Francis Ford Coppola, he looks like he did a good adaptation of The Black Stallion. I'll just send it to him.
Okay. And moxie, in the 80s.
This woman has moxie like you cannot believe, and I love her for it. What were you going to say, Tracey?
I'm going to give you your next big hit. I'm a school librarian from Fresno. There's nothing here. I've not seen any movies, but...
We don't have theaters here.
We don't have any of that stuff. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah. I love her. I love her.
Oh, she cracks me up. You're
I
right.
love
I
her.
think she's
Same,
funny.
exactly. That I'm reading all this, and I am just like, man, I want to play her in the movie. Like, I
There you
want to
go.
play her. She is awesome. So she hears about Francis Ford Coppola, who had made like probably the most successful movie trilogy of all time in the early 70s. But she's really into his Black Stallion adaptation, though she has not seen it for herself.
Oh my.
She read about it in Newsweek. I don't know why this cracks me up so much, but it's awesome. It's just so cool. The critique, this is what she liked about it. It said that he followed the book really well. It's so laughable when you think about it, but I love it. I love this woman.
Oh
So
my goodness.
the next step is even more 80s than all the previous steps combined. She goes to the library,
She goes to the Fresno
the
Library.
Fresno Library, and she gets herself over to the what did they call it? The research. What did they call that section?
The card catalog.
Reference.
Oh,
The,
I was like the card
I
catalog.
should know that they still have these. I
They
should know.
really don't. They're all gone now. You can buy them at antique shops. They're just
Yes,
anyway.
that's fair. Well, she finds herself in
the
a reference section at the Fresno Library, and she's trying to find Francis Ford Coppola's address
Are you
because she's just gonna write him up, like she's gonna send her little petition.
She is on a
and her
mission.
idea. She is on a mission. This woman is unbelievable. Like
There's
if I
not-
ever write a musical, it's gonna be about
about
her.
So there's not a lot to do in Fresno in 1980. Just need to remind everyone that this is why.
Right.
I
So,
cannot imagine doing this.
I can't either.
I'm like-
I can't either. Which is why I think it's so awesome that she did it.
That's
So she
funny.
goes to the Fresno Library, she gets the address, but snafu, unbeknownst to her, she gets the address for Coppola's New York production office, not the address for his California production office. Now, while that may seem like a big deal to us, it actually ended up working in her favor because everybody sent fan mail to Coppola's California production office, but nobody sent it to
Because
his New
they
York.
knew where movies were made.
Excuse me, that's exactly right.
Now we're killing Kristen. She's coughing. We're
That's
just gonna
right. I
Take a
can't-
minute. It's all good.
I can't laugh this much and not cough. Sorry about that. So she sends it to his New York address, apparently not realizing that there were two, but it worked to her favor because so much of it came to California that he never saw
Never
it,
see
right?
it. Yeah.
But when he gets this letter this package in his New York office, there was so little mail there that he actually did open it. And when he opened it, it was the letter expressing her idea. It was the signatures of the people who had signed her petition, like 300 people. And God love Joella Masakian, there was a paperback copy of The Outsiders because she knew he would never go and buy one on his own.
Just
So
so
she
you can have it.
Is she not wonderful? So she
love
pops it in there so he would quote these are her words, have it handy. I love her. So he would have it handy, and Coppola pulls out the letter, and he's talking with his producer Fred Roos at that moment, and he says, "Oh, look at this! Isn't this adorable? This woman in Fresno, California, thinks she knows what will
These
make a great
students,
movie.
yeah, these kiddos.
Oh, God bless her.
Aren't
This
they
is so
so
cute,
cute?
right? I made The Godfather, but she's going to tell me what my next project is.
Oh my.
God love her." So he hands the letter to his producer, Fred Roos, and he says, "Here, just check this out if you want to." Well, Roos takes one look at the book, and he's like, "This is the tackiest jacket I have ever seen." Jacket being what's on the cover of the book. And he was like, "This is the tackiest thing I've ever seen in my life." He throws it in his briefcase, which is a thing that men and women carried to work in the early 1980s.
We remember
Not
these
so
things.
much anymore.
Nope.
Usually it was leather. Often it had like these little things things that had like combination locks. My dad's always had
We're
combination locks.
We're having to explain this now.
I know, because but I remember there were entire stores that sold briefcases. Remember? Like beautiful leather briefcases.
It was a status symbol.
It was for sure. For sure it was. Anyway, so he throws it in his briefcase because he wants nothing to do with it. He carries it around for weeks. And then one day, a couple of weeks after this book, or after this package has arrived from Fresno, he's on a flight cross country, probably flying to LA from New York. And he remembers the book and he's like, oh, I got nothing else to do for the next 4.5 hours. So I'm going to give it 10 pages. I'll read the first 10 pages of this book so I can tell this woman she's crazy. Well, he can't put it down. Like he can't stop reading it. So he reads the whole thing cover to cover on the flight. And he realizes, you know what? Joella Masakian, say what you will about her, but she's right. This would make a great movie. Kudos to those 300 people who signed this petition. This would make a great movie. So he ends up calling her and telling her she's right. She tells her principal. I mean, it's a big to-do, as you can imagine. It was a really big deal. But he also told Fred Roos, the producer, also tells Coppola about it. And Coppola, you know, was interested enough and he trusts Roos enough to let him kind of run it down a little bit. Roos goes to see Hinton in the summer of 1980. The Godfather, like Joellen, The Godfather did not mean much to S.E. Hinton. But guess what did? Our horse lover was all into the Black Stallion, right?
Of course.
Yes. So she realized
this tough guy movie is being made because she liked the horsies. And I'm like, what?
This is great. This is so great. I love this story. So anyway, so she knows what he did with the Black Stallion and she's like, well, I love horses. And he does show an affinity for young adult fiction based on what he did, Coppola that is, did with his adaptation of the Black Stallion. Now, side note, Coppola's company, which had made an unbelievable sum of money with The Godfather in the early 70s, was really on hard times. They had made some bad choices in terms of producing, and so they were on hard times, and this is just how hard. Hinton asked for $5,000 to option her book, and before you ask, Tracey, I will tell you, that's the modern equivalent of $20,000.
I see.
So she had asked for basically nothing to adapt this book, and they could not pay it. Isn't that unbelievable to think about? They could only pay her $500 down. That's crazy to think about. Yeah. So over time, you know, as these things do, you get all excited about a script and then, you know, things happen and this happens and that happens and it just gets tossed in a bin somewhere, right? Everything was super stressful for Coppola's production company. He himself said it was like a war zone. There was a constant battle because they had made the wrong movies in the mid 70s and late 70s and were paying the price for it, right? So not long after The Outsiders, the idea for The Outsiders to become a film gets tossed in a bin on Fred Roos's desk, Coppola is on an airplane himself. And while he's on the airplane, he picks up The Outsiders and decides he's going to read it himself. And he loves it. He loves it as much as Fred Roos did when he read it under the same circumstances. Coppola loved it because he said it reminded him of being a camp counselor. And it was... and this
made The Godfather.
I know, right? It's just the best story. But you know, his work life was like a war zone, his own words. Everything was crazy at work. But he reads this book and it reminds him of when he was a camp counselor, which was a much happier time in his life. So you kind of think of his mindset and you can understand why doing The Outsiders as a film was an escape for him, just as writing it had been an escape for Hinton, right? This quote is, I believe this came from, it was either a New York Times article. I think it was a New York Times article in 1983. but it might have been from that same Variety retrospective in 2018. I didn't write down the source, but it's one of those two. And he said this. He said, I used to be a great camp counselor, and the idea of being with half a dozen kids in the country and making a movie seemed like being a camp counselor again. I'd forget my troubles and have some laughs again. So again, he's escaping from the reality of what's happening at his production company and
big
going back
budget
to this.
actors.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
he's like, if I do this movie, I can get young actors for cheap. It's their
Yep.
first big break because I am me.
Yes.
And they all want
Yes.
to work with me, whether or not
Absolutely.
I have financial troubles or not. And so it might actually be this actually might be fun.
Well, indeed it was, because let me tell you, speaking of actors, let me just tell you who was in this film that neither of us have ever seen. But believe you me, I will be watching very soon. Ralph Macchio. Ralph Macchio, right there. Stop right there. I'll watch it for him alone.
Yeah.
Ralph Macchio, Rob Lowe, Patrick Swayze, Matt Dillon, Tom Cruise, and Emilio Estevez.
So everybody.
Everybody, exactly.
The Brat Pack of teenage boys, right?
Bingo. And it was actually it was actually suggested that it was like an early Brat Pack, you know, because I mean, it is a murderer's row of actors who would go on to define movie making in the 1980s, right? Tom Cruise, Ralph Macchio, Karate Kid, you know, Rob Lowe, St. Elmo's Fire, etc. I mean, the man is still making movies. Patrick Swayze, Dirty Dancing, Emilio Estevez, Young Guns. I mean, unbelievable, this cast. So he makes the film with a $10 million budget. I didn't do the calculator on that, so don't ask me because I don't know.
All right.
But
I'll keep that one myself.
It doesn't seem like that's a very big budget, right?
It's not.
But this is what I thought was interesting in terms of bringing all of these guys in for auditions. For the auditions, he had them all come into the same room at the same time. You know, typically an audition would be like, you come in and you read your side with a casting director or an assistant or whatever. And then the next guy comes in and he reads his. But he brought them all in all at once. And Coppola said,
You've got to find, when it's an ensemble cast like this, you can't cast them individually at that point. You got to see if they work together, you know.
Well, and that's exactly what he said. He had to get that right mix for the ensemble. And then here I get to where, you know, I mentioned someone saying that the success of the story is that it's told from a teenager's point of view, not an adult trying to be a teenager. And that wisdom actually dropped from the mouth of Patrick Swayze. How about that? So I remembered I had put that in my notes. I could not remember to whom it should be attributed, but it was Patrick Swayze, which is very insightful for him to say. So the film comes out 1983, and it's a hit. It's a big hit. It far surpasses its meager $10 million budget in terms of earnings, and then it goes on to become really a cult classic, right? The kids who read the book in school were excited to have another means to watch this story play out. Yes. Well, there's yet a third way that this story plays out, and that is in a play adaptation by a guy named Christopher Sergel. This is adapted in 1990. It doesn't play Broadway. It's not, you know.
But this it's done a lot. Like,
yes, it is done a lot.
This is the one that I knew. This is the only one that I've ever like seen or known or anything like that. Was kind of lost when I got to the musical, and I was like, wait a minute, I think I've seen this before.
Yeah. So. Yeah, even as recently as 2024, it was playing to sell out crowds in Chicago. So it's definitely still performed. Now, of note, if you followed the whole scandal's the wrong word, but the whole hubbub surrounding Scott Rudin's production of To Kill a Mockingbird on Broadway a couple of seasons ago, maybe 2019. I think it was pre-pandemic and then came back post-pandemic, if I remember correctly. There was a battle in the courts over, you know, this adaptation that was already playing around the country and that Harper Lee had given her blessing to decades earlier, and then this new one that was going to play Broadway. Sergel's the guy who wrote that adaptation that Harper Lee had given her blessing to. That was really a word for word translation of the book. And it's same story here with Outsiders, but it still plays. It's available for high schools or whomever wants to put it on. It's available. And then we get to the musical. So we've talked about the book, the film, the play very briefly, because there's not much else to say about the play, and now the musical. Now, the rights to the film were still owned by Coppola's production company. So Fred Roos, remember our buddy Fred Roos from back in 1980, who got that paperback copy that Joe Ellen had sent from Fresno just so they'd have one handy. So he is the guy who decides, you know what, let's revisit The Outsiders. I think it would make a great musical. So again, he goes back to S.E. Hinton, Susie Hinton, and she's skeptical, but she doesn't stop him. She's like, okay, we'll see what you come up with.
Pay me money.
Yeah.
Like, right. She has not sold the rights to the musical version. She's sold it, obviously, to the play and to the film.
That's right. That's right. And they are all different things.
Remember when you couldn't pay me? You can pay me now.
That's right. Because of me, you can pay me. Right?
I'll be skeptical, but show me the money.
And
she's a smart lady. As she's grown, she's very smart.
She is a smart lady. She is a smart lady. I don't know where the idea was brought, where it came to him again. However, I can make some educated guesses. And one of them would be this play was announced in 2019. Well, the 35th anniversary of the film had been 2018. So I'm wondering if, that there was all this nostalgia attached to it by way of the 35th anniversary of the film. And then Roos is thinking about the film, and then he realizes, hey, wait a minute, there's all these shows going to Broadway based on films. Maybe we should do The Outsiders. I don't know that, but the timing seems to line up. It would make sense that happens, right?
No, totally.
But I can't point to an article or an interview where that is explicitly stated. It is purely an educated guess.
Yeah.
So, exactly. So it's announced in 2019. It's going to be the concluding show in the Goodman Theater. That's a major regional theater in Chicago. It's going to be the final show in their 2019-2020 season.
Oh.
Yeah.
We all know what that means.
Yes.
It means it's not going to open.
It's not going to open.
We're all so sad.
It is not going to open. So it was supposed to play June of 2020 with music by Jamestown Revival, which is an Austin, Texas-based Americana group comprised of Jonathan Clay and Zach Chance. Yeah, very good choice. Very
good choice for putting it together. And I mean, I've listened to the show and heard the show, and it takes you back to Tulsa. That's what it feels like, you know. So
Yep. Exactly. A great choice. Jonathan Clay and Zach Chance are the music and composer and lyricist, rather. And then Justin Levine, who's the music supervisor for Moulin Rouge, among other things. Yes, we have. We have talked about him. A Tony Award winner now. He is brought in to assist with both music and lyrics and with the book. The book was written by Adam Rapp. That's a name that may sound like slightly familiar. Yeah. You probably know his brother's name, Anthony Rapp, of course, who I knew him from Adventures in Babysitting, opposite Elizabeth Shue in the 80s. No. But most people know him from Rent.
That's how we know him.
Other things. And I believe he's a co-founder of Broadway Con. So not just Rent. Although that would be enough for sure. But Adam Rapp is his brother. And it's kind of funny to say he's Anthony Rapp's brother, because he himself is a very distinguished writer and in fact was a Pulitzer Prize finalist.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like he's riding his brother's coattails by any stretch of the imagination. He is very accomplished as a writer. So this is going to be the team. Liesl Tommy is supposed to direct that Goodman production that never happens. And then, of course, COVID comes and everything changes. And one of the things that had to change post-COVID was Liesl Tommy as director. She was already under contract to work on the Aretha Franklin biomaterial, and so she had to leave. And so in 2022, there's a workshop done, and Dana Tamor is brought in to direct. That's another name
Huh.
that might sound familiar to listeners of
Maybe.
this podcast. Dana Tamor obviously is the niece of Julie Taymor, whom we have said many, many things about on this podcast, most notably that she was the first woman to win a Tony Award for directing a musical with The Lion King in 1998. But Dana is her niece. She, too, like our friend Jo Ellen, grows up in Northern California. And she starts performing in theater, as you can imagine. She's the niece of Julie Taymor. She starts performing in community theater there in California at a very young age, and she just sticks around. She loves the theater. The first time she's able to see The Lion King, she was 9 years old. And she was amazed by the fact that there was professional level theater done both for kids and by kids, right? I mean, it was very impactful for her. She goes on to study theater and public health at Duke University,
Which
not
is
too
very
far from where I
smart.
am.
Do
Yeah.
what you love and double major.
And have a backup plan that will make money.
And double major because of the, yes, exactly.
Yes.
Because, yes, please.
Yes, we could do a whole episode on that,
I
right?
could indeed. I have a speech. It's very good. Do
I'm
what you love
sure.
and double major.
There you
And
go.
it makes,
I love that.
It makes parents feel very good
Yes,
when I say that.
bet it does. I bet it does. I bet it does. So she studies theater and public health at Duke, though her aunt was Julie Taymor. Both of her parents were doctors, so she was clearly influenced by both. And then she comes to New York after graduating from Duke. She works with her aunt as an assistant. To start, she works on Spider-Man. So,
Which she got an education, didn't she?
did she? Did she indeed?
Oh my.
Did she ever? And then after Spider-Man and a couple of other things that she does with Julie Taymor, she goes to apprentice with some other directors before striking out on her own. And this, of course, is one of her first solo projects. I mean, she's just now like 34 years old. She's still very, very young. And The Outsiders has its world premiere after a 2022 workshop. The Outsiders has its world premiere at the La Jolla Playhouse in California. We've talked about La Jolla before as well in relationship to Jersey Boys, because La Jolla is where Jersey Boys kicked off as well. So we've mentioned that on this podcast too. Now, she worked very closely with Hinton as she developed this show. She so wanted, as you can imagine, I mean, it only stands to reason, she so wanted the author of the book to love the show that she created. And so
she brought her in after the fact, because this was all written in 2019.
Yes. So she,
And she
as
doesn't
she
come
was
on
directing,
until-
as she was directing.
She's like, come here.
Yeah, she would really lean in to get the vibe, to get the feel, to get the look. She wanted to be sure everything was accurate. And so for that, she really leaned hard on S.E. Hinton. So as the show opens in 2023, she is so nervous. She's sitting, in one of the front rows of the theater, and Hinton is right behind her. She cannot, for the life of her, bring herself to make eye contact until right after the show. And she looks back and she sees Hinton lock eyes with her, and Hinton is weeping. And she puts her hand over her heart as if to say, "This is so good. I am so proud." And as you can imagine, that was an enormously important moment for Taymor.
Because you don't get
very
that
proud.
very often.
No, you don't. No, you do not.
So,
Later in a social media post, Hinton made it even more clear that she was very on board with this adaptation of her story. She called it, quote, my musical.
my musical.
Yeah. So that would feel very, very good, I would imagine.
But think about that being in your, I mean, what are 50s, 60s at least?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
looking
she's,
back on
I think,
something that you
74
wrote.
now.
74? Okay.
I think that's right.
But you look back and you're like, you wrote this when you were 15.
Yeah.
And being like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
This came out of my brain and I'm watching it and people are singing.
Right. And imagine think of how differently you would write something now than you would write when you were 15.
Yes.
So I just would imagine her relationship to this material. I would imagine there's so many layers to it, right? Like it changed her life, obviously, but now she has to look back and think, well, she doesn't have to. I just wonder if she does look back and think, oh, I would do this differently, or I would say this differently, or I would phrase, you know what I mean? I wouldn't tell that part of the story. I would do that. She has lived a lifetime literally with this material and seen it in multiple different perspectives, right? It's been interpreted by many people.
Many people.
So it's interesting.
And but again, we've put this in the hands of a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
I come back to it over and over again. I'm like, this is really interesting because it just doesn't seem like. Anyway, I'm always like, this is interesting that we keep trusting this to someone with a very, very clear female perspective who is writing young men, who's directing young men, and as a director, it's like, obviously I can do that, but it's interesting because it goes against, I think, sometimes the logic that says
it does.
If you're going to reach young men, or if you want them to care about it, we need to have kind of more of a male perspective about it. And that has proven over the years not to be true.
Right.
You brought up Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling.
Absolutely,
She is J.K. for the same reason Hinton is S.E.
Yeah.
Because they thought no boy would read it if it said Joanne on the cover.
Right.
And, that obviously blew up and became kind of just a little successful.
It's okay. She's done okay. She
has done okay for herself. But,
yes,
I think we can kind of get rid of that misnomer that, like, female directors or, female writers cannot write the male voice.
Yeah.
But, I guess it goes back both ways because, women say all the time, this is a man writing a female voice and it doesn't even sound like a woman. And,
yes.
I think, it's interesting. I think if you're a good writer, a good director, you're just a good writer and a good director.
Yeah, I think so too. So naturally, after a very successful run at La Jolla Playhouse in the spring of 2023, when it's repeatedly extended because it's so well received, it's obvious that the next stop is Broadway. And indeed, that is what takes place. The show opens on Broadway at the Bernard B. Jacobs Theater on April 11th, 2024. And it is nominated for 12 Tonys and wins 4. And among those, as we've already said, was the big one, Best Musical.
Yeah. So we need to kind of talk about that and
talk about
what's going on. So The Outsiders, if you've done any look at it or research, it kind of feels a little like The Notebook, where I said, if you're reading the reviews, it's going to say this, but don't necessarily go with that. If you're a lover of the book, this is how, when we talked about that, sometimes that the reviews are a little misleading. Yeah. Right? I kind of feel the same way about this one. I mean, honestly, everybody was a little shocked when it won. It was up against Hell's Kitchen, Illinois, which most people have never heard of. Suffs, which people have heard of and is going on tour, and we'll talk about soon.
Soon.
And Water for Elephants. So these are all shows that really haven't come into at least the national psyche in any way, shape, or form. Haven't toured yet, a lot of them. Some of them are embarking, but not. But this was a very different year. I mean, we've been talking about the Tony Wars was stacked with stuff, in 2022 and 2023 because everybody had held everything over COVID. And so this was a really different year. And so when you got all of the Tony, like, reporting, it was all about Daniel Radcliffe winning a Tony Award, for Merrily We Roll Along. It was all about, oh gosh, what's his name? The Spitter. King George III. What is his name?
He's in Just in Time now. Jonathan Groff.
There we go. Groff sauce. Yes.
Yeah,
Groff.
There it is.
Have I mentioned that I'm not very good with names? I know it. I can see the man. I know that he spits everywhere. I mean, it's like, obviously I know who this person is, but cannot find his name. Right. That is me in a nutshell. But everybody was, that was the leading headline. Groff finally wins the Tony for Best Actor. Like, I mean, those are the things that we saw from that, and the musicals just kind of got pushed under the best musical wasn't a leading headline. And I thought that was I just remember going, so who won the musical? I was like, I've never even heard of The Outsiders. Like, I hadn't heard of it at that point. And I have a PhD in musical theater. I do this for a living, and I hadn't heard of it. Part of that is because of when it opened. Part of that is just because there wasn't a lot that came out of it right at first. The reviews on this one, when it came out, were incredibly mixed. It feels very much like reading some of the ones that came out for The Notebook.
Yes.
It was obvious that this was not a favorite of a good portion of the critics. I've been racking my brain this week trying to kind of look through and figure out what's going on here. Why, like, how do we get a best musical that people have to vote for? And everybody is surprised by it because it's not one of those. It doesn't feel like a dark horse like Wicked versus Avenue Q, right? The big controversy where it's like everybody was like, of course Wicked is going to win. I might as well vote for the underdog because this was a good one too. And apparently everyone did that.
Everybody voted for the underdog.
And that was, I mean, I remember watching that and just being like, seeing everybody go, what just happened? It was just shock, absolute shock. But in this particular case, I really thought it was either going to be Hell's Kitchen or Suffs. Because Water for Elephants feels very much in the same way like The Notebook. Like people it didn't get a lot of good press at all. And it doesn't mean people don't go see it and they don't like it. But press is different, right? Why do you need press? You need press because it gets the name out there and you want it getting out, under a good wave. Sometimes we need those sound bites to market.
Absolutely. Think of how many times you see think of how many times you walk by a theater and it is plastered with sound bites clipped from reviews.
So, I mean, obviously enough members of the Tony voting members, like, they voted for it, y'all. Like, they got the most votes. So this is not something where we can say, oh, it didn't deserve that, because a lot of people saw it and really did think it did. Just that the critical reception didn't come back right. So again, another reason not to always just go with the critical reception and just walk in there. But I've been racking my brains this week going, what is the issue? If you read the reviews, a lot of it is just kind of like meh, right? It has an Act 2 problem, but they say that about every show.
Everything has an Act 2 problem, yes.
They say that about the Phantom of the Opera that we're going to do next week. I mean, they say about everything has an Act 2 problem. My opinion on that phrase is literally like, no, your ADHD brain wants to get up and walk around. Right. It doesn't have an Act 2 problem. You have an ADHD problem.
This is why more and more shows need to follow the example set by shows like The Drowsy Chaperone and Six.
Yes.
And cut it to one act.
90 minutes, no intermission.
You can't have a second act problem if there's no second act. Am I right?
Exactly. So, and it's like I've been looking at that and they say, it has a second act. And it's just kind of a lot of them did have a lot to say about... And I think just general population, people who've seen it have said, gosh, that second act, though, is beautiful.
Yeah.
And some of that is very Tamor-esque. So you've got, the mass fight that kind of starts the denouement of the show is done in the rain. But it's rain like you've never seen before. It's like, this is a hard, like you see the pictures of it and it is coming down and they are fighting in the rain and it is magical to watch. Saw some kind of critical response was like, well, that just takes me out of it because all I'm doing is going, how do they make it rain? Well, just pay attention. You're fine. Yeah. Calm down.
Right.
They say that is magical. Brian McDevitt, his lighting design for this was apparently incredibly on point. And Brian was one of my professors at the University of Maryland.
Oh, wow.
He's a great guy,
And he won a Tony for this one.
He won the Tony for the lighting design. He is very good at what he does. And the most unassuming guy you would never know. He has several Tonys. And
no
he
kidding.
Kind of just hangs out and he does his own thing. He's just, and he's a, you know, he's a thinker and he's got the artistic side of it down, which is great. But there is a lot about this film that they attribute to the visuals.
Well, interesting that you say that because it not only wins Best Musical, but it wins Lighting, Sound, and Direction.
Yeah.
So it didn't win Scenic Design, but nevertheless, it's still part of the sensory experience, right?
And I mean that is straight out of a Julie Taymor playbook.
Yeah,
right?
No
what
question.
I do like is that she didn't get a lot of there wasn't a lot of people who were like, oh, it's just like a Julie Taymor thing. Even though I can look at it and go, ooh, I'm seeing shades of some of these things that she's learning. She knows she's not just doing it to do it. Like there's a reason that you need the sensory experience right there. And she's basically taking, you know, what Aristotle calls the spectacle and raising it to a plot point, which is what her aunt does.
Yes.
Like that is classic Julie Taymor, and it works when it's done well, when you incorporate it into the plot. So we know we have that issue. The thing that I see more than anything is the meh that people get from this show comes from two different places. One is lovers of the book or lovers of the movie, that it's not enough like that for them. And you just go, well, I saw one person who was complaining about the exposition, and I was like, y'all, I need exposition. I need to know where I am.
Right.
Like,
I've never read it, so I need it.
Or complaining about the fact and I thought they were actually pretty legitimate complaints, is that the literature aspect of the novel, that they were learning the literature and Bway is talking about the literature in it, that was lost in this adaptation. And I was kind of like, that. Personally, I just kind of go, sometimes we're being a little nitpicky right now.
Yeah.
I think it is, you know, it's a criticism, but it's a little nitpicky. You know, lovers of the film don't think it landed as well live as it did kind of in the film. It didn't, the tension, everybody talks about how the tension is broken, and so it doesn't have that massive payoff that we were looking for from the movie. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is the amount of people who say, and I think this is a cultural thing, this is about where we are right now in kind of American society, this idea that it's like, been there, seen that.
Yeah.
Stories about young boys who are down on their luck and are really good at heart. That's everybody's story now. This is not something that is new.
Right.
So you're just kind of telling everybody's story right now. Everybody is put in these, you know, in these impossible circumstances. So why do I care about this particular boy? And I thought that was what I was getting at, and I thought that was interesting. Because in the 60s, this book, along with others, you know, other movies that are made, just really does resonate with this generation of people who feel like nobody realizes that I have a good heart. I have something to give, but you know, I'm just, you know, put into a stereotype or whatever. And we've done a lot over the years to try to like address some of those things, like the kids from the South Side or who they are, rather than putting them in boxes. Right. I mean, we've done a lot of that. So now we're just kind of at the point where it does not resonate in the same way with folks.
That's a great point, because think about it. There was no, you know, how many novels were written about with a high school boy as a protagonist in 1967, right? If we don't have a young adult fiction genre, how many books are featuring, I don't know how old he is, 17-year-old boy,
14.
Whatever, 14,
He's 14
whatever.
in the
14-year-old boy. Excuse me. Right? So we didn't really have that type of character in the canon, so to speak. And then as that genre grows and we have more and more people writing from that perspective or around that perspective.
Well, then the 80s come and that's all we do.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of diluted by the time we get to 2025 and it's, ever how many decades removed from the genesis of this genre by way of this book.
Yeah.
So I can see that for sure.
And I just thought, it's just kind of weird because, structurally, like music-wise, the music, they chose well with the composers. It's I think it's well done. Lots and lots of people say the lyrics are pretty simple, but, that lines up with the book is written by a 15-year-old.
And the characters are
14.
Right.
Like, that's how they see the world. And
yeah.
And so I think it is, I think Hinton's response to it should tell us something, that it's like it's kind of on point as to what this world was supposed to be. It's just, you look at it right now and it won the Tony, so it's doing everything right. It's just not quite hitting. It's not hitting America in the right way. So I'm interested to see what it does on tour. I'm interested to see. If you've listened to this podcast at all, you know that I talk all about how we're so regionalized and different regions are impacted in different ways, and who is who's drawn in by this, like who is impacted by this particular musical, because the people that I would expect to be all over this musical have just not been. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that means that we're changing as a society or that we've given up,
that's entirely possible.
But it's weird when you see these moments when you kind of go, we're not having the response that I would guess.
Yeah.
There's no reason for us to be like, oh, I don't like this. Like, to have that backlash in the same way, I don't know.
But I wonder, just hearing you say that, it reminds me of conversations that we've had about certain jukebox musicals that didn't hit like they were supposed to, what is it that, I don't know what the disconnect is that doesn't, one thing hits and another doesn't, I don't know.
Well, and then you look and you go, what we said this about ABBA and Chess, Frank Rich killed Chess dead, right? It was a review that said meh, and then everybody follows.
That's right.
I'm just not like, I think that was pretty prescient at that point. Like he knew what he was talking about. People read it and went, "Oh, it's bad. I'm not going to go see it." I don't think we do that today. Mm-mm. I don't think we read the review and go,
Absolutely
"Well, I'm not seeing this." Then,
in fact, I think it's a lot of times works on the contrary, where people are like, "Well, he hated it, so I'll probably love it." You know what I mean? He or she hated it, depending on the reviewer. And not
everybody loved Wicked either. It got some really, really bad reviews. And I remember being like, I love this musical. It's going to close because I love it, because that's what happens to all the musicals I love. They close. And so I, named my dog Elphaba. And then I had Elphaba the dog that everybody was like, oh, you named it after Wicked? I'm like, you know what? When I named her, it was about to close. It did not have this big thing.
It was an homage.
It was a super cool, musical theater historian thing.
It was a very niche thing.
And now everybody's got a dog named Elphaba.
Look at it now. Yeah, it is interesting how, but that, gosh, that also goes into a transition from the traditional critic that we've known for a century or more than a century, to we're seeing newspapers reassign those reporters and we're moving away from that model. And suddenly it's all about the social media influencer.
So much is, yeah. But how many social media influencers are 15-year-olds?
Right.
Which is really where this thing hits.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have the same group of people going to this particular show.
We'll see. I'm excited to see it. I have tickets at some point in the spring of 26. So it's coming to Knoxville, Tennessee, and I've got tickets to see it when it comes as part of the Tennessee theater season. So I'm excited to see it.
It just started 2 weeks ago, so it's very, very young, and it's road trip. But it's supposed to be spectacular as far as the visuals are concerned.
Yeah. And one other thing that we talked a lot about Julie Taymor and Dana Taymor. I want to say one other thing that is not my original thought, but I think is interesting. We've talked about some of the similarities between Julie Taymor's work and her niece Dana as we see it in The Outsiders. However, someone pointed out that while Julie is drawn to telling myths, I mean, she does a lot of work, Shakespeare and mythical folklore, that sort of thing. Even when we talked about her in the development of The Lion King, how she first interacted with those, I think it was Thomas Schumacher, at the LA Arts Festival. I think it was like an American Revolution myth or something like that she was telling. So that's what she does. But interestingly, Dana has been drawn to telling new stories and telling from this uniquely teen perspective. She's also the director of John Proctor is the Villain. Yeah. So, it's interesting. Which was
written by Kimberly Bellflower, who I worked with at Emory.
Nice.
It was weird. I was like walking by her, hello. That's about what you do when you're an adjunct.
Yeah.
Hi, as you walk by. And then I was like, oh my gosh, you were on Broadway.
Right. Wait a minute. You wrote that play. Yeah. So it's interesting. And one thing that she said that I think is very cool is she was asked about, you're doing all these teen dramas. What is it about you? And she said, well, I think it's that I take them seriously. And I think that's really prescient too, right? Like there's something to that, not seeing it as dismissive because it's related to teenagers, but taking it seriously. Yeah. And I think that is a really strong thing for the telling of these stories.
And maybe that's what we need. Maybe a good portion of the audience is going, meh, but the teenage population, the one that we really need to start paying attention to because they are the future.
They are.
Not us.
They're going to be buying the tickets before too long. We hope.
Maybe we need to pay attention to that. So,
yeah. All right. On that note, let's wrap it up. That'll do it for this episode of the Dr. Broadway podcast. Tune in next time when we'll be kicking it way back, talking about The Phantom of the Opera, the first show I ever saw on Broadway in 1991. This show opened on Broadway in 1998 and is based on a book by Gaston Leroux.
1998?
I'm sorry, 1988.
There we
Thank
go.
you for fixing that for me. Thank you for fixing that. Trust but verify.
This is what we do.
Excited historian, right?
Exactly.
1988, and is based on a book by Gaston Leroux. Until that time, you can connect with us via email at hello@drbroadway.com or on Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok at Dr. Bway Podcast.